So, my name is Mark Duggin, and this is Bob Mumford, and we're just going to invite you here to join us for a few minutes. We just wanted to just invite you into our conversation that we've been having over the last couple of days, and just kind of talk about this new Plumbline that Bob's written. And the title of it is Things That Matter.
Things That Matter.
Things That Matter, and Bringing Heaven Back to Creation is the first portion of this. So I'm just going to open this up a little bit, and then we can have some discussion around what this looks like. So there's 6 of these overall, and the first 3 are what's going to be in this first portion of the plumb line. And when you open this up, the first one you have is to discover and embrace the purpose that God engaged you. Why? What was that? What did that look like? And you often talk about that. Paul talks about that.
See, for us to understand that, what Paul was saying was, I want what Jesus had in his mind when he knocked me off my donkey.
It's quite dramatic. When I knocked off my donkey.
Yeah, quite dramatic. And what we have done is made Jesus to be a problem solver. He's so much more than a problem solver. The purpose of God, succinctly stated, is Christ's intention to restore God's fatherhood to humanity. When you see the reason it matters is because his ultimate purpose is to see God's fatherhood restored to his family.
Sure.
Now we could expand that 10 times, but if we could just hear that, Mark, just hear that. And so that's why in the Plumbline we started with this. We've made the issue heaven or hell. Oh my goodness, that's so minuscule, and essentially it's tragic.
Sure.
But the purpose is for me to co-heir, sign up, take the kingdom offer, and work with Christ in kingdom purpose to see God's fatherhood restored to the earth.
Absolutely. Well, when you lay it out that way, that's so much more than problem solving. Because that idea, the intentionality behind that was before the foundation of the earth.
But see, what happened was, initial evangelism was, quote, keep it simple, stupid. See that? So then the only message was heaven or hell.
Sure.
And that has been so truncated and misconstrued, and it's now losing, honest to God, losing its value.
Well, and when you think about the purpose, the reason why God did that, seeing this binary choice at some juncture in the line of heaven or hell, that doesn't help us find purpose. That doesn't give meaning to our human journey that Christ came to give life to.
And if I am receiving Christ and I don't smoke, don't chew, don't drink, and wait for Christ's return, what in the world has happened to kingdom purpose?
Sure.
And see, I lived that way for years until I understood the kingdom offer is participation, inheritance, maturity, growth, intentionality. And so now all of that's starting to come. When that happens, the secondary, tertiary kind of purposes are washed away, and we're finding something that matters, I'm telling you.
There does seem to be some clarity when you take on that kind of thought versus this binary choice. And not clarity in the sense of I know all the pieces, but clarity of purpose, clarity of identity in Christ, and then as a human being that I'm supposed to walk out.
The basic issue for me, now this is very personal, if our listeners can hear me, it would be important. My witness is I need a father. We have changed the witness to a salesman. The salesman is saying, you need Jesus or you're going to hell. The witness is, would you participate with me?
That's right.
Christ saying, would you join me? Joint heirs, co-heirs,
Yes.
inheritance.
Yes. Yes.
Would you join with me in proclaiming God's purpose in the earth so that God's fatherhood would be acclaimed, recognized, received by a hurting humanity?
Sure, sure. And you see the life in that. You feel the warmth and the heat of Father draw of that.
Ever. My God.
So when we think about this will and God's purpose and what God would want in the earth, what he has in mind, one of the things I really enjoyed was how you made the distinction between the Greek words, is that right?
Yes.
Of
yes.
bolema and thelema, which
Yes.
is will in the earth. And so the way I remember that I wrote down here was that bolema is purpose or determined purpose, and that thelema was wish and desire. Can you help us put that in a little context of seeing God's will being done in the earth, your will be done?
That's like saying sick 'em to a bulldog, you know.
Right.
Anybody with a Strong's Concordance can look this up very easily. Thelema, meaning wish. Thelma is the word.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Thelema is the Greek word for wish or desire. God's wishes are not always done in the earth.
Sure. Of course.
6:10, Matthew. Pray that Father's wishes would be done. I could do some war stories here, you know, but I went as a pastor, I walked into a situation, couple fighting, and I said, this is not the will of God. And so out of it came a healing of the marriage and a birth of a child, and whole purpose started to come out of it.
Sure.
Now, the word wish, carefully, these two words are never confused Greek-wise.
Okay.
Never. When he speaks purpose, it's inevitable, it's inexorable. It will happen. There is nothing on the earth that can stop it from happening. Sovereign,
God's nature.
Unrelenting fulfillment of God's purpose in the earth. Now, we can't do anything about the ultimate purpose, but we can do is contribute to his wishes that fulfills that purpose.
And it is our co-heir, co-worker in this human environment.
See,
we can participate.
When I signed up for that, I mean literally, intentionally, signed up for that. I said, Lord Jesus, I want to participate with you in honoring God the Father and allowing his purpose to be unfolded in the earth. Now, purpose is, when I said it's inexorable, it's something God is going to do. Heaven or hell cannot prevent that from happening.
Sure.
And so now we're starting to touch something from that's variable, and we lock into something. One other statement, I'm not trying to lecture here, but one other statement is, purpose is unshakable.
Sure.
See?
Sure.
You see that?
I do.
The purpose is unshakable. And once I line up with purpose, then I am unshakable.
Which is really meaningful in our human journey.
Oh my God.
I mean, that's really a stability factor.
So whatever's going on in the earth is purpose, and I am aligned with purpose. All of a sudden, my security, sense of identity, what I'm living for, what I think life is all about.
Sure.
Starts to line up. And, I've been at this almost 70 years, and I was teasing some kids, some college students the other day. I said, I'm asking the Lord for another 10 years. And they started to clap, because once we touch purpose,
Yes,
I am so compelled and excited and thrilled that we would be able to contribute to purpose. See?
of course.
How do I do that? By hearing and obeying his wishes. So it all makes sense if we ever get it straight.
Sure. I feel like that's a really compelling, potentially shift for some of us, moving into that space and seeing will and purpose and the importance of that. And I think as we see that, you've really been often using this illustration of a house with 3 levels, and you opened this up a couple of years back with the wisdom teaching that you did, and we'll link that in the video below. But I think that when we think about the living room, some of the other maybe ways we've talked about that in recent history has been the moving sidewalk and the third choice. So we've given lots of different, I feel like the Lord keeps giving us lots of different tools to potentially understand what he's asking for instead of this binary heaven-hell choice.
Yes.
He's giving us a lot of other ways to engage with that. So when we think about Christ being in the living room and engaging us in the living room, can you open that up a little bit about what you see in that, the value of that, why it's important?
The reality of attic, living room, basement was the first. Let me preface this, Mark, a moment. May I?
Absolutely.
To say, this Plumbline was the hardest thing I have ever written. We called it Things That Matter because the issues are so profound. There's such a multiplicity of voices that we can be distracted. So if I could take a moment to say, attic means those of us who have been religiously compelled to be holy and we don't get involved. And so I'm in the attic and I know how to instruct everyone. In the basement is people who tried that and people who have never understood light or Christ, depressed, weird, hedonistic. They're in all kinds of problems. But the living room is where Christ lives. The living room is what he is calling us to. Come out of the attic, come out of the basement, and be with me in the living room. Now, that Greek word is Zoe, living room, the living Christ, the living mind. Zoe is used, I think, 120 some times, but according to what translation, by the way, so don't hold me to the numbers, but according to what translation, how they translate it. But Zoe means the life of Christ that was imparted to us in the living room.
Yes.
We share that life.
Yes.
We participate in that life. You are imparting to me his life. I am imparting to you his life because the living room, and now, and I think everyone probably sees self-evident that I am sent to the attic.
Yes.
There are hurting people in the attic.
Of course.
So religious you can't even touch them. My friend had a father, this literal, my friend had a father that canceled the newspaper because it had liquor ads in it. Now, you talk about...
That's some attic behavior.
That's
some attic behavior.
The same thing in the basement. People have rejected Christ, rejected religion, rejected life almost sociopathic, you understand? So depressed, nothing matters. So there I am in the basement, in the darkness. I don't want anybody to touch me. Don't give me that religious crap.
Sure.
See, so now, here is the living room.
I think what's beautiful about the living room is that people, you just mentioned the pain in the attic.
Yes.
Well, I mean, the living room doesn't, it acknowledges the pain.
Oh.
It embraces, you're still walking through the same scenarios, but the living room allows you to embrace the difficulties and the joys and the disappointments and the great excitements, and you embrace it in the full realm of our human emotions and that Christ set up, that Christ demonstrated for us.
See, you mentioned the moving pathway or the moving sidewalk. Succinctly, it goes like this: the Auca Indian comes to visit America. That's where all the missionaries were killed.
Right.
And they bring him to America. He gets off the plane. The plane is fascinating. He can't figure out what's going on. They take him off the plane and put him on not an escalator. What is
that
it?
Moving pathway.
The moving sidewalk. Mm-hmm. And so he writes to his friends. He communicates to his friends. I'm telling you, the path itself was moving, and they couldn't figure out how that. So it's really a joy. Now, when we engage Christ's purpose, it's like the moving sidewalk. Events happen. Christ or God the Father doesn't cause the events. He uses them.
Absolutely.
Yes, and
Absolutely.
What he's doing, help me, what he's doing is restoring my humanity.
Sure.
He's
Absolutely.
making me compassionate, full of agape, compassionate to those in the attic and to those in the basement, and normal in the living room. I fit in the living room. I'm comfortable. I'm normal. We're growing together. Now, a piece of that is really important. Everybody thinks that Jesus is going to do the Zoe. He's going to give the life. No. Here's what he said. John 7:39 says these words. Out of my belly will flow
yes.
rivers of Zoe. So I got to the living room, tried to be normal, learned how to fellowship in the living room, mm-hmm. and all of a sudden, life starts to flow out of you. Then I recognize my false dependence on Christ to a true dependence on Christ,
sure.
where I am allowing him to use my hands, use my lips, use my mind to bring life and healing to others.
And that goes right back to where we started with, if Christ is only a problem solver, then he's just doling out answers instead of inviting us to grow up into that teleos, what are we called to, maturing process.
If you're watching this with us and you read this Plumbline, Romans 8:29 says these words: when I am conformed to the image of Jesus Christ, mm-hmm. I don't become another Jesus. I become his brother and sister.
Yes.
So he is building family, not more Christ. But the family are conformed to him, and this family is carrying his wishes and his purpose.
Sure. And you see the very Zoe in that, the life-giving spirit of that. I mean, when then we steward that in our own persons. I mean, it seems quite fulfilling to make that journey in the living room with others.
And see, it's rare, the living room, somehow the living room is, we've missed it or something. For us to be able to be mature enough to fellowship in the living room.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a kindergarten.
That's right.
And it's not a religious prison. It is a place where we are exchanging life, purpose, insight, understanding, spiritual growth. And we're finding a maturity that allows me to engage in Father's wishes and impact his purpose in the earth.
And I think when you bring that up, remember I sent you a text last Sunday and I said, it was just the middle of the afternoon, I was thinking about this, the living room had come to mind, and I thought, this is so profound. It seems, the implications seem quite straightforward, and they're so life-giving. But then as I started thinking about that, and as we've talked about over the last 2 days, when we think about the living room, the choices that we make, our values that we onboard as being essential, those have a certain ability to move us in and out of that space. So are we being healthy in that, or our choices and I don't know, the way we're seeing the world around us, then bumping us into the attic, kicking us down the stairs in the basement. I mean, it really is quite a life-giving kind of tool and lens to look at.
It honestly, Mark, once we stop the heaven and hell thing and start recognizing Zoe, life,
yes,
purpose, wishes,
sure,
then like Christ, when Christ entered Hades in the resurrection, he broke the power of hell and released everybody's in it. Their testimony is a witness.
Yes.
It's not a salesman.
Sure. Well, there's a real difference in that of trying to convince someone of what is versus testifying from your own journey and how you've experienced these things and seeing that come to life in the living room with others, exploring that together versus just having a dogma or a rote system of how we know things.
But life, one of the things that, of course, I'm afraid I'm going to start lecturing you. I don't want to lecture.
We'll shut that down. We'll cut that off.
But see, if you see Zoe and life, you suddenly recognize that all doctrine is inadequate.
Yes.
Not wrong.
Yes.
Just inadequate.
Sure.
If I tell you everything I know about God, it's inadequate because I can't explain to you all about God or heaven or kingdom or anything.
That's right.
And so the inadequacy forces us to interpersonal relationships.
Sure, of
I
course.
I need you, man. This is really helpful. See, I need, this helps me and us to communicate what it is that needs to be heard.
Sure.
It really does, Mark.
I think the living room I think it'll continue to yield just some understanding and insight as we keep processing things that we've already known through that lens. And I think as we look at the last point here, the third point of this first portion of the Plumbline is seeing agape as the only feasible absolute. And we've been talking about this for a couple of years, about agape is the only absolute as the world presents all kinds of things, either being, there are no absolutes, it's all subjective, whatever you feel like, versus trying to lay out other absolutes that fall short when they get walked out to their extremity, as compared to what we've seen in agape that holds, and seeing that God himself is agape, his essence is agape. So we're not talking about just an attribute or something that he does, it's who he is. And so can you open that a little bit with seeing agape as an absolute? What does that mean to you?
Well, I've had a fear of word burnout, but there's only one thing in the earth that is an absolute, the best I can tell, which is God is agape. He doesn't have agape, he is agape. Consequently, the incarnate Christ is living agape. Meaning his love is eternal, radical, inexplainable. He loves in ways that we don't even understand. Now, when we use the word agape as an absolute, it means, please hear this, it means I know and God knows when I'm using you for my own advantage, or when I am seeking to impart to you the love of God. It's an absolute.
Well, when you talk about that in the exchange of Zoe,
between one another,
man. You feel the warmth of that.
And so the moment, so now this is actually what happened. As my friend, we were in another nation, and my friend starts saying, I would love to go fishing. I'd love to do black marlin fishing. And I knew what he was doing right on the spot. He was fishing himself for a free trip to fish marlin.
Right.
And he was using the pulpit illegally in an eros manner to gain personal advantage. Agape does not do that. Mm-hmm. So the absolute, the only one I've ever seen know is, I know when I am giving myself to you for your benefit, or whether I am using you to sail in your boat, to take your money, to help me. And so the eros phenomenon means I am using God to use you for my personal advantage.
Sure.
And when that stops, life flows up on you. When that stops, when eros ceases and agape flows, Zoe, the life of God, imparted, strengthened, understood, enlightened, my heart is warmed, my words change, my responses change, and it's transformational.
It is.
Transformational.
It is. So in thinking about that last bit of agape and seeing that as somehow God's governing force in the earth, and you've done a video about this and written about it a little bit about being governed by one word. And one of our friends, Peter, had shared an incident with somebody he's been working with that he had lived a life that he had been in really intense environments, harsh environments, and was coming. And Peter sent him this, and he was wrestling through the implications of what you were presenting with living by one word. If we're able to live by this, it really does move us into that living room space. So I think as we kind of wind this up, what does that look like if we are governed by one word? One word being agape.
Mark, I'm not trying to play any word games here, but the reason agape is absolute, nothing could be absolute if I was instructed to live by one word. That's Galatians 5:14, anyone can see it. It's Greek. It's irrevocable. This man's response that you mentioned was shocker for both of us, because he has been in situations that have been so corrupt and injurious. And he said, when I heard Bob explain what it meant to live by agape alone, this is his phrase was, and you remember that. I think I have found truth for the first time. I was very, very moved over that.
Well, I think we all were. I mean, when he opened that up to us and kind of gave this man's background and his work experiences and the difficult situations of his life, I thought for him to come to that conclusion after listening to you for just a few minutes.
Yeah. It
was
what,
really
12 minutes or something
it's
like
short.
that? Yeah.
I mean, but it really comes across clear. It was really a gift to see that, wow, this really has some clarity and it's a real workable way forward.
So the plumb line now, we called it things that matter. Now we've touched the first 3 things that matter. We're trying to communicate with all integrity and purpose. If you can see these, hear these, walk through the plumb line with care, we would try to answer any questions or adjustments. But the 6 points, we wrote them because everything is changing.
Mm-hmm.
Finance, social, religion, everything is changing. The Catholic Church, unchanging church, is changing.
Sure. It's like join the club, right? With everything else that's changing.
And so what we felt was needed, give me these 6 points that I could see clearly. Build my life on this as foundational truth. 3 and 3, you'll see them. And I am promising you a sense of unshakability. When you see them, you suddenly realize this is greater than death, greater than money, greater than reward, greater than popularity. You have found something that really matters.
Sure. That's good. So if you're interested in reading that and want to follow up with this, to track with these first 3 points, the link for the Plumbline, the digital version and a printed version, if that's what you'd prefer to read, that'll be below in the description. You can just grab that there. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.